Greetings, GBC family. Well, last week we restarted children's Sunday school and hospitality time with coffee and the new Sunday morning schedule. And wasn't it a delight at how those changes went? I trust that you were blessed and encouraged by the changes that we were able to enact last week. And we trust that they will continue to be a blessing to you and your family. This weekend, we're going to be making another significant change to the way we are doing worship. And as we think about those changes, it will be helpful to you not only to know about the change and what it is that's happening this weekend, but how that change came to be. As we have implemented guidelines for worship in the past year, things like masking and distancing and limitations on hugging and handshaking, there have been several things that have guided us. They haven't been just decisions that we have made off the cuff or just because they seemed to be pragmatic at the time. There were at least three guiding principles that led us. First of all, we desired that our decisions be biblically based. The past year has demonstrated just how easy it is to be swayed by emotion or the latest opinion. And we wanted everything that we did to be founded on some biblical principle that was guiding us directly to that decision. Secondly, in particular, we had a desire to carry out the biblical responsibility to provide loving care for the entire church body. We saw that in part in Romans 12, 9 to 13, and we'll see it again starting next Sunday, the 21st, in Romans 13, 8 and following. We were aware that if certain members of the body got sick with COVID, it would have potentially far more significant consequences for them than it would for others, either because they were in precarious health positions themselves and they were much more likely to experience a difficult recovery or even death, or perhaps it might be difficult for them because of lost wages, because of their inability to work, either because they'd come in close contact with someone with COVID and they had to self-quarantine, or because they had COVID themselves and that would restrict their ability to go to work. And thirdly, we were particularly paying attention to the best medical counsel that was offered by the state and by our members. We are well aware that there are various medical opinions about masking and not masking. But because we are not medical professionals, we did not presume to stand in judgment of the official medical statements made by the government. And we spent no time seeking other medical opinions on the internet or on the web or elsewhere, instead choosing to follow the guidelines of the CDC and the medical professionals within our own church body. Because those were our guidelines, we didn't want to implement change in distancing or masking practices until there was a clear and compelling biblical reason to do so, or there were clear changes in other areas that allowed for or warranted some kind of change. This past week, you are well aware that Governor Abbott gave businesses the right to remove distancing practices and masking mandates. In reality, that changed nothing for us as a church, since the church was never compelled to follow those distancing and masking guidelines. But that decision by Governor Abbott did provide an occasion for us to ask again, has anything changed in the principles that we just stated? Do we now have a biblical principle to change? In other words, does something in Scripture mandate making a change in our practices? Or have circumstances changed enough that a change is appropriate and feasible while still caring for the vulnerable members of our church body? In our evaluation, at least two things have not changed. The biblical principles that guided following masking and distancing have not changed. Our priority is still to care as well as we can for all of our church body. And saying that, we are aware that no matter what decision we make, it will inevitably make it harder or less likely for some to participate in corporate gatherings. Secondly, the medical opinion about masking and distancing has not changed. The CDC is still recommending wearing masks and distancing. And it's interesting to note that many, in fact, most of the places I have been this week in our community are still following the practices of masking and distancing. Not just the large corporations, but even the smaller locally owned businesses are still following those practices. At the same time, some things have changed. The number of cases of COVID in Hood County have decreased significantly. In fact, the numbers have dropped enough that the county is no longer currently updating the number of active cases. So the only number that we have about active cases in Hood County is the number of cases in GISD. And currently that number sits at about 0.05% of COVID cases. So that's a very, very low number. So the risk of contracting or passing COVID in a public gathering is much lower in Hood County than it has been in a very long time. Also, many in Hood County and in our church body have received at least their first dose of the vaccination shot, and some have already received their second shot and are close to receiving the peak of their resistance to contracting COVID. So again, there is a lower likelihood of being infected or of infecting others. Thirdly, another thing that has changed is that originally masks were deemed to be of no benefit to the one who was wearing the masks. We were simply encouraged to wear masks so that we might care for others, that we would not pass on something to others that we ourselves had that we did not know that we had. Current medical opinion is suggesting that masks are of some benefit to the one who is wearing the mask. So it does provide some protection for him or her. And so if someone would come to church and is wearing a mask, even while they are around others who are not wearing masks, they will still get some benefit and some protection from the mask that they are wearing. In light of all those things, we have decided that now is an appropriate time to remove the guidelines for worship that we have asked you to follow. And we are leaving it up to each individual member and each individual family about whether or not they will mask or distance themselves from others. You are welcome to wear a mask and sit in distance seating in Sunday school or worship. And side note, we will continue to have distance seating available to those who would like it. Or you are welcome not to wear a mask and to sit without distancing. The availability of non-masking is for both the worship service and for Sunday school. And again, just a side note, while we are not requiring children's Sunday school teachers to wear masks, they have all said that they would happily wear masks if parents make that request for the benefit of their particular children. While everyone is free not to wear masks, let's also at the same time remember this. Our reputation in our community and in our church body is that we are a loving and caring church body. In fact, I heard that comment again, unsolicited this week. As many of us will likely choose not to wear masks, let's not wear those masks in a way that demonstrates love to those who do wear masks. And that has, I think, at least three implications. First, would you continue to please self-screen your own health before you participate in worship or any other corporate church event? And if you have COVID symptoms, please do not attend and participate in that corporate event. Secondly, let's be careful to make no condescending remarks about masks. Words are a significant way to express love and care. And let's please be sure to guard what we say and how we say it so that what is said builds up and encourages and equips those who hear the words and that they are not torn down and harmed by the words that we speak. Thirdly, if someone is seated in distance seating and wearing a mask, let's be sure to put on a mask before speaking to that person. Or before grabbing someone's hand to shake it or grab them to give them a hug, be sure to ask if that expression of love would be appropriate and acceptable for them. For instance, you might just say, would it be acceptable to you if I gave you a hug? Would that be a blessing to you? And would you appreciate that? In fact, I would suggest that even if you are not wearing a mask, that you carry a mask with you so that you are ready to love those who continue to wear masks by putting on a mask when you talk with those people. In conclusion, it should be noted that the church body, our church body, has thrived in the past year of unprecedented change. Our giving is strong. The general fund is very healthy. The benevolence fund this year reached its highest peak ever. And the giving to the building fund for the parking lot has been much stronger and more gracious than we had even anticipated. Our church also has grown numerically during this year, and our church has grown in love and care for one another. As we move into another phase of returning to a normal kind of worship and ministry, let's continue to care well for one another, and in so doing, demonstrate our love for Christ. With great love and affection for you, I anticipate seeing you again for worship on Sunday morning, masked or non-masked.